Welcome in, lovers. You're in the Embodied Liberation Lounge. I'm your host, Lola Darling. Let's vibe. Welcome back, lovers, to another week in the Embodied Liberation Lounge. And the episode I have for you this week was a super empowering, amazing conversation that I had with Tanya Jane over on the Big Dreamers Bible podcast. And we had such a good conversation. She asked me the best questions, and I got to really dive into my work and embodiment and what it means to me to live embodied, as well as how we can hold that and how we move forward and with healing, and what is elemental embodiment, which is something I'm super passionate about. So check out this episode for all the good juicy details where you get to actually get the flip side of me telling you a bit about what I do for work, and play and pleasure is all the same, and where somebody else is asking the questions and I just get to riff and transmit and go deep. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It was a really empowering conversation, and I loved being a guest on the Big Dreamers Bible podcast with the Tanya Jane. You can check her out on Instagram and go check out her podcast as well. It's amazing. Please enjoy. Hi, lovers. So today I have a very exciting episode because I'm bringing my best friend Jasmine onto the podcast today to finally record just the way that we converse in depth about pretty much anything. So this episode is just us kind of shooting the shit around a topic, the topic of embodiment versus integration, and you can see our process and the depths that we go, and we kind of lead you on a little journey through what it is, like the definitions of embodiment versus integration, how they may relate to each other, and ultimately coming full circle to a conclusion at the end. So enjoy this conversation, and there will be much more to come of conversations like this where you can join me and Jasmine unpacking lots of things at depth and length that will benefit us all. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. All right. So excited to be here in the lounge with one of my best friends, the initiatrix. If you want to check her out on Instagram, and she is just a magical human doing all sorts of beautiful things in this world, including being a new mama and just an artist of energy and energetics, and helping people really integrate and come into their body from just being who she is and being at the level of embodiment that she is at. So I welcome Jasmine into the Embodied Liberation Lounge today. And yeah, we're just gonna have a topic that we're gonna go into and have a deep conversation to share with you all. So Jasmine, if there's anything you'd like to say, introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's always fun hearing introductions because it's like, ooh, how do you see me? Like what lens are you viewing me from, and like what stage are we setting for this conversation? It's so much fun. And I love that you're like, meet the initiatrix, and then went on to like the energetic play, because it's like, and I know you and I have talked about this so much, but like being in the field of certain people is like an initiation into itself. And I'm one of those people. Like
Absolutely.
my partner Ryan used to call me like a walking ayahuasca ceremony, a walking medicine ceremony, because I'm like, whoosh, all right, like let's journey,
It's
So I'm excited to see where this journey brings us.
Yes, so accurate. Oh, I also was going to introduce you as the possibility architect, but it didn't come out till now. So that is also another title that I love about this woman.
That's so funny. That's like weaving years back that I was like going with, like probably right when we met.
Yeah.
I was really rocking the possibility architect. Um, and the reason is because like I am possibility embodied. like the way that I live now, I didn't even know was possible. And now I live it. Now it's my like daily waking life. And yeah,
Yeah, and
that's the
it's
whole
beautiful.
story.
And we can see the beautiful Big Island Hawaii through your windows.
Yeah, I know. I love it. All the green.
Okay, so I want to drop us in here. We're just going to go for it.
Yes,
I
please.
want to speak about, dive into really the the nuances and differences or even sameness of embodiment versus integration. So if you want to just like riff on that and roll, we'll just dive in and do what we do.
Okay, totally. Yeah. I love this topic. And, so you and I have so much shared languaging already because we talk all the time. So I feel like we should start off with exploring these two topics because there's such like hype words at the moment, like integration and embodiment, and you see them all over the place, like manifestation. And it's like, but what the fuck does that even
What
mean?
does it
Like,
even mean?
what does it mean? So let's break it down. I mean, and really, this is our topic. Like, what is the
Yeah.
difference?
I mean, so I actually have textbook dictionary definitions that
All
I can
right, let's hear it. Let's
share and
start
bring
there.
in, and we can
Yeah.
just kind of open it up with that. So, to embody is to give bodily form to incarnate, to represent in bodily or material form, or to make part of a system or whole, to include. And to integrate is to make into a whole by bringing all parts together, to unify, to join with something else or unite, to make part of a larger unit.
Okay. Can you read the first part of the embodiment one again?
To give bodily form to incarnate.
Okay. Well, I mean, therein lies the difference right there. One is
Right.
like, we're already here, landed on Earth, and the other one is we're working on landing.
Yeah.
You know?
One is, I feel like it's like birthing something or bringing birth to something, bringing that like sort of eros even, or like the motion and the emotion and the caricature to something via body, like incarnate, birth it through the body. And the other one is just bringing pieces and parts into a whole that are already existing.
Yeah, totally. So I feel like we have to choose a moment in time because it's like if we're talking about, and Ren and I've recently gone through this motherhood journey where I got to like witness this soul becoming incarnate, which was very much an embodiment process that she is, 7 months old and still learning like, how does my body move? Fine motor skills. Oh, can I rock? Is that going to lead me into crawling or falling on my face? Like this is a different process of embodiment versus like someone like you and I, for example, who's done all this work and is in this process of exploring like what deeper levels can we embody? What like other parts of ourselves are coming in to like be deeply embodied. And so it's like choosing our starting point too because it it's very different. There's like the very clear-cut physical aspect of like becoming embodied
Yeah.
and also becoming embodied, which is like you may know all these things, but you have to like bring them into your body, bring them in to this state of like lived experience.
Right. And then there's this then that's when the overlap sort of comes in. It's like, yes, you become embodied as you incarnate here on earth, and then you're growing, right? And we're getting like different or like new up levels of in our embodiment as we grow and change and transform and like bring in new information and learn more and evolve. But also then in order to do that, in order to embody our highest truth at a new level, we have to generally integrate something into that so that we can embody it and express it out.
So you feel like integration is a part of the embodiment process? Like integration is needed in order to embody?
I mean, I feel like they're kind of interrelated in this infinity loop almost,
Mm-hmm.
where for the fullest expression of something or some part or even of the whole of you, there must exist both a level of embodiment and a level of integration.
And can each exist without the other?
What do you think? Do you think they can?
I think we chose two terms that are so like niftily intertwined that it's almost like splitting hairs,
Right. I
you
mean,
know?
that's the point. And that's why when I posed the question to you, you were like,
Hmm.
let's podcast about this, right? Because I sort of have been playing with it as a key when as like it's like if you can picture for my audience that can't see me moving my hand in front of the screen, if you can like picture it as an infinity loop where you have embodiment on one side and integration on the other, they're intricately connected and feeding each other. Can you separate them? I feel like I feel like there is not much separation, right? I feel like they work together. Is there a starting point? Do you think that there's a starting point? Do you feel like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Embodiment or integration? Can you focus on, is focusing on one going to bring you the other? Is focusing on either one of them first going to be more beneficial
Hmm.
to the transformational process?
Yeah. So let's zoom out for a second. Why does it matter what the difference is? Like, why did this question come up for you?
I don't think it matters what the difference is. I think that there's a lot of confusion in the space because all of these words are sort of being just like used in marketing and used all over the place. And I feel like that a lot of times maybe they're being used as the same word. And so that's why I posed the question of what is the difference? Where are the nuanced intricacies of differentiation between embodiment versus integration when you have a world that's sort of using all of these trendy words and
Yeah.
tossing them just randomly into different places for the sake of marketing. But like,
Hmm.
what's the true depth and meaning of like what you're actually talking about? And I feel like a lot of people aren't necessarily grounded in that knowledge or grounded in that knowing of like, what is the difference? Why would I choose to use the word embodiment versus integration? And there's
Hmm.
lots of words like this that we use, right? But these are the two that I just wanted to bring into the conversation because I've been just like rolling around with it in my own mind, really trying to pull on these threads. So I thought it would
Yeah,
be fun to do that with you in this conversation because that's kind of what we do. But you know, there's all sorts of other
totally.
words in the field that are like this, like alchemy versus transformation and like, you know, all of these things that we're using in this industry of social media marketing and the coaching industry, especially like interchangeably or like with an ungrounded depth of knowing what we're actually even saying or speaking to. And then, of course,
Hmm.
the audience isn't picking that up either if we don't even know. We're just using it as a buzzword because it sells or because we think people like it or it's trending.
Oh, buzzwords. I feel like alchemy and transformation is also a great one to pick apart sometime.
Mhm.
Um, because also in that context, like one is the other, right?
Yeah.
Transformation is alchemy and alchemy is transformation, but where is the difference? But coming back to integration and embodiment, I want to make it like tangible. I want to bring it into the experience of where's the difference. So rather than just like you and I can like rabbit hole, we can just like, all right, let's open up this portal and dive. Look, there's another one. Okay. So like
But yeah, so
let's
let's bring it back to that. Go for
yeah.
it.
So the example that comes to my mind right now is Ryan. And there's this process of embodiment and integration. So he's in this journey right now of like harvesting and inventorying and analyzing all of these storylines that have woven through his life and all of these experiences that lead into like what is the Ryan Hunter brand. And it's this beautiful, I mean, it's alchemical process, but of integration, of bringing all of these different threads together and weaving them to be like, okay, cool. What does this tapestry look like? You know, like all of these different pieces that he has studied, that he's focused on, that he's been interested in for, 15, 20 years. And then he gets to look at it in this integrated fashion of having it all like woven together and say, okay, now what? Now that this is all one whole
What does
and
the
I can see
embodiment
it
of that
all.
look like?
Well, not even that yet, but it's like, now what? What does this look like? Now that all of this is integrated in myself, but I can see it here, what does that mean? Then you have this other side of the question that's not even really the same. But like, what if those pieces are informational, are conceptual, are experiential, are things that he's lived and had the opportunity to fully embody? And so I think there's the difference is that like integration isn't always landed. It can still exist within the realm of the mind and the information. Embodiment is like taking all of that and bless you
Sorry.
and landing it. What do I walk through the world as? What do I have like lived experience in? So maybe that's where it is. It's like it's like the embodiment is like this lived experience. And so I wanted to make it tangible rather than like this conceptual, like, embodiment and integration, same, but different. um, we can utilize integration as this really very much in the conceptual world of things. I've studied all these pieces, I've done all this work, I've journeyed, I've done this healing, and now I'm integrating it all to understand what is the tapestry of me. And then it's also the next step or a different step even is like, what of that tapestry do I live this life as? So the embodiment I see is not just like something that's like alive in our body, like I'm in flow, or like I'm turned on, or whatever it is that happens to be like our corporeal body. But like, what do we embody as in what and how do we live? What have we given ourselves this opportunity to experience and integrate into the wholeness and live life as? Because you can go through medicine journeys and, all of these things and be like, great, I did the work. And then you go home and it's like, shoop, 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 shoop.
Sure, you're still, and you can go home and still just be very disjointed, fractured, and disembodied.
Totally. So that process of like bringing it into this lived experience, I think is really what we're meaning here by embodiment, which is again different from, say, what my daughter is experiencing, which is like, how do I move my arm and my leg at the same time and not fall over?
Right. Or well, it's a different level, right? It's like the initiatory level of embodiment of just like
Yeah.
coming into this world and learning how to get around.
Mm. I don't know. I would substitute initiatory with primal.
Fair.
It's like the very primal, can I move my arm and reach for this thing? Will I be able to grab it? And then once I grab it, can I let go of it when I want? Or is it just gonna, hammer around with me? Versus a more intellectual style of embodiment, which is what we're talking about, and which is what I think a lot of the marketplace is like referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a question. Where did it go? Um, what percentage would you say if that's like, I don't know if we want to do percentage, but like, what do you feel? How much of each of these, whether it be embodiment or integration, or even like the connection of both of them, what level of that is happening at a subconscious level or in our nervous system versus like we're taking conscious quote unquote control of the act of integrating or embodying? Do you
I
feel
mean,
do you feel that both take a deep level of conscious awareness to do, or do you feel that it can be done in the background, so to speak, or like at the subconscious? If we're like mapping out this tapestry, for instance, context for the question, like we're mapping out this tapestry of all of the things that we've learned and taken in of our life that we've like integrated into our wholeness. But then for that to be integrated, how much work does that take to
mhm.
bring these pieces into the whole? And how much of that, if any of that, do you feel is just happening as we move through life in our embodiment, let's say, right? Like if we're living as
Mhm.
the wholeness of all of these things that we've taken in our life, is there a conscious effort to be had to make that, to keep that unified, to keep it in cohesive whole? Does this question make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it does. Um, I mean, that's what I've decided my work, like my life's work is, right? That's why I call myself on all of my platforms or brand as like the initiatrix. Um, my life and my work is around initiations and rites of passage to bring this process into the conscious awareness, to bring intention into the ways that we are integrating and embodying and experiencing life and giving ourselves the opportunity to live a life of aliveness, which I think is the difference, right? In what you're asking. Yes, for sure, we can do all of these things unconsciously. It's happening all the time, all over the place. We are gathering bits of information and integrating into our subconscious belief and patterning. We are, and then operating with that without this conscious intention of how we are creating our neural pathways to be able to be working in order to support the life that we really want to live. So we're gathering all these bits and pieces from people around us or walking down the street or, media online or social media and other people's life, wherever, all over the place. And it is always integrating into some level of our being and our systems, belief systems, um, models of the way that we look at the world. Not all of those pieces are becoming embodied pieces. However, if you walk down the street, you almost get hit by a car, and then all of a sudden you're like, then you have this like internal kind of pause because of this little mini trauma that you experience. That's an embodied experience that is unconsciously created. And so to realize that all of these things are happening all the time anyways is a really key piece to be able to bring them into the conscious awareness so that we can navigate and create consciously, create specifically our lives and the way that we
Exactly.
experience our lives.
And doing
So,
so with intention.
and doing so with intention, awareness, like conscious creation and desire.
Mhm.
It's like allowing all of these initiations that we experience through life to be harnessed and harvested for what they can offer us rather than just like, okay, cool, that was a great experience. I'm going to go home and get back to my like desk job and, arguments with my partner, or whatever it is. And so, yeah, I mean, for sure there's a difference. For sure it's unconscious and conscious. That's like what my work's about.
Yep, absolutely. So there's something coming through that might help listeners sort of understand this perspective, because we've gone a little bit like this that's coming through. And that is like the integration is sort of like the gathering process. Like you're gathering information for all of the parts of you. And the embodiment gets to be the expression, the aliveness, the magic that you in our worlds, like that you intentionally take from all of that you've gathered and express out into the world.
Yeah, for sure. I love that summary and like wrapping it all together. It's like we can integrate all of these pieces, but the embodiment is how we move through this world. It's the aliveness or numbness that we choose to walk through our daily lives with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, yeah, I think we just kind of like summarized and placed the difference.
Yeah, and it's still they're feeding each other always, right? Because you
Yeah.
can as you get to a level of your embodiment and expression, it's not that you ever stop learning, growing, and evolving. So there's always going to be new pieces that you're gathering and then
Hmm.
discerning of like, oh, does this fit? Am I wanting to integrate this? Does this fit? Try this on. Okay, it does. Now how do I move from that, bringing that piece in to sharing it as my embodiment, as my aliveness, as my magic?
And we're always sharing that piece, right? Just because we are uh beings that that walk on this land, we're always sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sharing our energy, sharing our life force. I don't, that's too much to pick apart, but sharing our uh, our energy, our moods, our expression, our curiosity. We're always sharing, whether we go to the grocery store or even stay at home and just scroll. And so there's again like a conscious awareness around that. But there's a question coming to my mind, which is like we've deeply explored like how integration flows into embodiment, but you know, with this
Hmm.
with this wave, how does embodiment influence integration?
Hmm. I feel like when we've come to the level of intentional, consciously creating our lives, we can bring something in that we wish to be a part of our aliveness, that we wish to be a part of us. We can bring it into our existence and embody it before even really understanding the logic or the like information behind it, right?
Mm.
So, for instance, with an experience, let's say you are dancing, right? And something comes through your body. Maybe it's a new persona or a new archetype, and you start playing in that archetype
Mm.
and moving as it, embodying it, living as it, doing mirror work as that part of yourself that's come through. And you're like, oh, like I want this to be more fully expressed in my wholeness. So I'm just going to keep moving through my day with this. And as you do that, if you continue to show up with that and show up in that energy, basically you're reprogramming to then have it be integrated into your system.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. I'm glad you went into like what this could look like because at first I was like, I don't know that I follow, but the dancing image and scene lands it for me. Yeah, you can, but I
Because it
mean,
can
I feel
come in
like,
and you can exist as it first before you even
yeah,
realize, right? Before you're having some
okay.
cognitive function of like, oh, I'm picking up this, I'm going to go search for an archetype I want to embody today and bring that up, right? Like, say it just drops in,
Okay, but I feel like this
or
is
you
very
just see it.
like particular experiences that are often not as common. So it's like it's seen a lot in manifesting a part of ourselves, like this alter ego work, like or fake it till you make it,
Mhm.
or like live as though, that's really
That's what was
common
coming
in,
through for me too.
yeah, like that's really common in the manifestation coaching world, like live as though you make $100,000 a month. And then we have all these people in debt. But that's another story. Um, Yeah. So,
And is there any truth to it? Because this is what was coming up as I was speaking too about embodiment leading into integration. Like, is there truth to it? Can it
well,
also
is
lead to
that true
integration?
embodiment? I would venture to say absolutely not,
Right.
you know?
Not until it becomes fully integrated and therefore,
Right. So it is almost as though integration must happen before embodiment can fully happen.
yeah, that's kind of what's rising.
And to jump the gun to embodiment first and then go back to integrating it is almost like, leaping and hoping that there's a step there.
Perhaps, unless you look at it from a psych perspective, right, of there's two ways to heal and transform, and that is a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach, meaning you can go from primal up to cortical, or you can start in the cortical and drop down into the primal, which is almost this loop where, let's say, the integration or the embodiment is the primal, so you'd be
Yeah.
doing a bottom-up approach, or the integration is top-down.
Well,
Where you're
I see.
starting in the mind, right?
Yeah.
And
I
dropping
see
down.
what you're saying. But I feel like the embodiment of like I'm not dismantling or challenging that this like kind of fake it till you make it culture is incorrect.
It's just not true embodiment, and I totally agree with you.
But it is bringing a particular frequency into the body which then you can begin to resonate at, which then expands out, and then you can begin to integrate it. And then the true embodiment happens.
Right.
So it's like it's nuanced. It's not like full embodiment, but it is like frosting on
It's
the
like
cake, you
training.
know?
Yeah.
Huh?
A
Yeah.
training ground.
Yeah, it's like dressing as though, you know, you live in this particular life, but inside you don't feel like you belong in that life, you know?
Until it becomes integrated.
Right. And then you dress, you move, you feel like you belong in that world. So I still agree with the yes and.
Yeah. Always. It's always both and I
Yeah.
do think that it makes much more sense to the body mind,
Hmm.
maybe even the logical mind, for integration to happen first, because it's going to make the embodiment and the lived expression of that easier because it
Yeah.
feels more true.
And then going back to your dancing scene, like you can be dancing and maybe this experience or this emotion or this archetype or character drops in, but there wouldn't really be the space for that unless you had opened that space within yourself.
But opening a space for that to come in is just opening a space for that. Whereas, like, it doesn't have to be, nothing has to be integrated for
But
space to
it
be available.
but it means, I mean, we're getting into the conversation of like resonance and vibration, right? It means that you've already begun to resonate at such a rate that that experience is even available to you at all, which means there is at least start to an integration that allows for that experience.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I love us because we're, as I was saying, like, oh, look at this store. Shloop. Okay,
Yeah,
there's
as we
another
do.
one. As we do. And I feel like we could go on and on and pick apart
So,
all these
bringing us
things.
back then to the
Hmm.
topic and just the idea of integration and embodiment. And we've sort of mapped through here and pulled all these threads to where we both kind of feel more resonant that like integration kind of happens first, or 90% of the time, 95% of the time, integration's happening first, and then you move into embodiment from there. But
Hmm.
as you say, like, this is your work in the world, right? I'd love for you to just share, because I think this is also going to help the listeners grasp and understand the difference between the two, or like the just like creating separation between the two rather than using them more interchangeably. Like 3 tips, hacks, practices that you have for integration. And then we'll talk about embodiment later after.
I mean, So this is also a conversation of like, what are we integrating? But so I'll pick two. Let's say your entire life into a brand, for example, or an an experience like a medicine journey or something that's like a heightened mm, created experience. And both of these require integration that often is not like focused on. My work has been so focused on integration because it's so important. Like you can experience this and then go back to your life. And as we said, it can just all go away. Or like you can live your life without really taking a solid inventory. And then you're just kind of like moving through as though you haven't taken stock for who you actually are and what you bring to this world. And so some steps I think can be similar, which is like harvest. So go back through and pick out the pieces that really stuck out to you, the pieces that you want to bring in, integrate into like how you move through life. So whether it's these different experiences that you've had through a lifetime or through an experience, but harvest them, like bring them together. And maybe you're writing it out. Another piece can be oftentimes an integration is not just bringing pieces in, but also letting pieces go. And so also acknowledging and harvesting, or not harvesting, but like composting what needs to be released.
Mhm.
Because in that process, you're making space for these other things to land. And then you have to tie it all together. You have to like take this, all of these threads that you've picked apart and create this tapestry. And that's almost like establishing this storyline that is you, right? It's almost like bringing these pieces into your lived experience now. And there's a couple different ways to do this. Let's see.
Something that's coming through as for this that's just like coming up is building relationships, like build relationships with those parts that you're bringing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. But I feel like writing it out, like something that's been really alive for me recently that I've done with some people is like claim that part of yourself, claim the part of yourself that you got to meet in that experience, claim the part of yourself that you have become through a lifetime of everything that you have experienced. Claim it. Who are you now that you've harnessed these pieces? Who are you now that you've released these ways that no longer resonate? Maybe they've kept you safe or helped, become survival mechanisms, but you no longer need them now. And claim that. And in that is like a really potent integration. So to summarize, it's like harvest, release, and claim.
Mm, beautiful. And so then from there, let's like go with your embodying something that the experience, something
Mm-hmm.
experiential. So say you like sat in an ayahuasca ceremony and then you've come through, you've harvested, released, and claimed for your integration. So then what are the next steps if you were then to move into embodiment after you've claimed this new part of yourself? How do you move into fully embodying it, bringing it into the body, living it as your truth?
This is where experience comes in. Like, not that you have to have already had the experience, but that you are choosing to walk as the experience. So there's a level of trust that has to happen, like trust in who you are, trust in the experience that you had, trust in the harvest that you've, created and the things you've released and the things that you've claimed. Trust in the way that you move in the world, but take the steps. Like all of that is good and fine and dandy, and you can sit in your room all day and be like, good, I've claimed this. But if you're not making any steps, if you're not like walking as it, you're not really bringing it in and embodying it. And so, did you ask for 3 steps or just like, what does that
Just,
mean?
just whatever, however many you want to give us.
So, I think the next piece is like action.
Yeah.
The next piece is living as it, trusting that it's already in place. Because we can also I think this is one of the reasons integration is really necessary. And then also embodiment is because we can take these pieces and then we can doubt it all. Be like, oh no, I'm just gonna go back to, living my desk job and getting in fights with my partner. Um, and it's like, no, trust that all of these changes, transformation, shifts have occurred and live it. It's like we can have an idea, but it's really doesn't really matter until you take action, you
Until
know?
you're believing in yourself and trusting yourself to live as it. And then this moves us into a nervous system conversation because a lot of the times we can be quote unquote trying to live this embodiment, but we get hung up by the nervous system seeking its old past, like it starts living in the past, or it starts living in old emotions or old thought patterns, and that pulls us out of the embodiment that we're trying to live in, or like we're working really hard to live in. And so there's also a process of having to you have to devote to continue showing up for that new way, for that new embodiment, because you're retraining and reprogramming the nervous system to believe that that is your truth.
Yeah. And it's really like embodiment is this devotion to aliveness, which is life in motion. It is choosing to be activated. You take this what you've claimed and you move it into life.
I love this that you're saying, like this devotion to aliveness. I love it.
Yeah. And by taking action, it becomes an embodied experience.
What kinds of actions can one take in their day-to-day life to embody something? Like, is this something that can even be broken down into, like, not necessarily like, oh, 1, 2, 3 step process, but like, is there sort of a way to logicize it, so to speak, of like certain things you can do in your life that help open up space for you to step into embodiment?
Yeah, well, I would say, as you mentioned, like nervous system work, whether that's regulating the nervous system, or creating elasticity within the nervous system.
Yeah,
It's not
flexibility.
necessarily like regulating to a still point. It's like, can you create this ability to respond? Another one is like emotional release, like all of those things that you've released in that integration process. Like sometimes they need to move through the body, saying it or writing out, like, I now release this particular thing, doesn't move it through the system. So giving yourself for like cathartic experiences is something that really helps that nervous system process, but also like what we hold in the body. So nervous system regulation, cathartic release, and um and then it's like strengthening, but this often means in flow. It's not like going out and lifting weights. It's like living as that experience. So whatever you've claimed, moving through the world in that way, giving yourself the opportunity to have those experiences that bring it into the body, that bring it into your, not just like the corporeal body, but the lived experience.
It's that sort of, it's this space that I call within me, this like unwavering embodied presence. So when you find, when you've made that your center, and this is where the nervous system flexibility comes in too, it's like you've made that your center. This is like your true north point. And nothing about any of this work says you have to be there 100% of the time. It's when you slip off of that point that you're now walking in as your embodied aliveness, so to speak. Like
Yeah.
if you like veer off of it, or the nervous system pulls you in a different direction, the work is really about how quickly can you become aware of and
Mhm.
shift back shift back into this state. It's not about being there 100% of the time. It's about continuously and consistently bringing yourself back there. And over time, this becomes something that happens quicker and quicker. And then at a certain point, then it becomes your new normal to where you're not having to do that anymore because it's your normal. It's where you're always shifting back to.
Yeah. Yeah. So that speaks to like the nervous system and even the catharticism.
Yeah, that.
And yeah, that one. But really like activating, taking action on this idea, taking action on this claiming, taking action on this, what has been integrated is part of what brings it in.
And also taking the responsibility to take that action, but taking the responsibility that I'm choosing this. And so then it is my responsibility to continue bringing myself to this truth.
The ability to respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With power.
Always with power.
Jasmine, this has been beautiful. Thank you so much for coming into
Yeah,
the
thank you
lounge.
too, though.
Is there anything else you would love to share with these listeners today? Where they might find you? Any offers you have available?
Well, you brought up photography at the beginning or
She's
before
an
this
amazing
call.
photographer, y'all. Beautiful
Um,
photos.
yeah, but it's really so much more about just the photography. It's really about like this, it's really an initiatory process. It's really like this being who you are becoming, this version of you who you can feel dropping in, who you've touched, who you've like glimpsed. Let's bring that now. And through this like integration and embodiment process and having these images to refer back to through the like the integration of the embodiment process, because it's like, right, you can have this experience, but then you have to kind of the continuation of the work expands to bring it into that lived experience. That's what these photography sessions are about, which I love so much. And they've been so potent. And it's like what is created is truly medicine.
Truly
Medicine.
medicine. And it's part of everything that we've been talking today. Like it can really help anchor in the embodiment and the integration.
Totally. And it really like sparks into that next version of who you're becoming
Mhm.
and helps with the integration and the embodiment. So doing those and loving it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Great. So I
And
will
you can find me. I haven't really like posted a lot of the photography, but Instagram, The Initiatrix, same on Facebook.
Yep. I will link that in the show notes. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. I look forward to having more of these conversations. I mean, we're having these conversations all the time anyways.
We look
So,
forward to sharing more of them with you, dear
yes,
listeners.
exactly.